Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Sean sent me a note, reminded me of a story that happened to one of my clients years ago. And the headline from KEYC out of Minnesota, contractor declares bankruptcy, customers stuck with bills. This is happening in Mankato, Minnesota. A window and siding company has officially gone out of business. And now some of its customers are left wondering where their money went, because the window and siding company was a local contractor that had been in the Mankato area since 1990. In an email to customers on August 29th, the company announced to be going out of business and was filing for bankruptcy. The problem, of course, is some customers have already paid the company for future work, and that work will not be done apparently, and the money doesn't appear to be getting ready to be refunded anytime soon. So one customer told the TV station, I wrote out a check for just over $20,000, signed a contract for them to start re-siding my house. And money's gone. House is still there, not re-sided. Customers like her are stuck in a jam. Much of that money came from insurance claims and needs to be spent on the specific project within a set time period. So to get the project started with a new contractor, money needs to be paid up front. And of course, that's money that the customer already gave to this company. Now, the Minnesota Department of Labor does have a program and a fund to reimburse residents for losses suffered from contractors doing fraudulent things. That's something that some of these people will apparently be able to pursue. The woman they interviewed said, I was told from the Minnesota Department of Labor Industry that this could be a criminal act that the owner did as well, because you don't go bankrupt overnight. I know some of the other goals are they want criminal charges pressed against the owner of the company, but my goal is just to get my money back. So it turns out that some of the customers who paid the money and got nothing have filed police reports, and then it would be up to the city attorney as to whether or not criminal charges will follow. So the first thing you have to immediately realize is there's two things going on here. There's a civil side and a criminal side. And so if a company goes bankrupt, they say, hey, look, we've got more debts than assets and income. We cannot operate. Therefore, we're going into bankruptcy for protection. And it might cause the company to get dissolved. And what's left over might get divided up amongst the people who are owed money. But quite often, there's not enough to go around. Okay? So that's the bankruptcy action. However, if you pay money to a contractor for them to work on your house and they take your money and don't complete the job, you can go after them in civil court and sue them. And I'll talk about one of those cases in a second. But likewise, if a company is taking money from people under false pretenses, knowing they're not going to be able to do the work, that could be criminal. So criminal action and a civil action. And the fact that there's one does not rule out the other. Sometimes both can happen. And so you don't often see contractors being charged criminally for doing this, but you hear about this a lot in the industry. And by that, I mean the number of contractors who are out there who are operating on very thin margins or not operating properly or whatever whatever leads to it, where they take the money from one job and don't use it on that job, but they take money from the next job to pay for this job. And next thing, there's several jobs down the road, and it becomes almost like a Ponzi scheme, except they're just running behind and handling their money poorly. But I had a client once, and this is one of the craziest cases I ever had to try. It went to trial. And my client hired a guy to redo the windows in his house. And it was in the fall. And my client gave the contractor a bunch of money, and because the guy said, look, to get started, I need money to buy the windows. And then I'll come out, rip out the old ones, put in the new ones, and we're done. No problem. And by the way, the company had a presence. They only had one location, but it was on a major thoroughfare in Oakland County, Michigan. I used to drive by it all the time and see it. And so the company's right there. You'd think like, hey, they're right there. I mean, they're good for it, right? And so my client gave this guy a bunch of money for windows for his entire house. And I couldn't make up worse facts, okay? The contractor came out to his house the week of Thanksgiving, Monday, Tuesday, I don't know what day of the week it was, and started the job. And started the job by tearing out all the windows in my client's house and said, I'll be back tomorrow, start putting windows back in. Never came back. Never came back. Now, I believe there was plastic over the holes in the house where the windows were. So my client starts calling, and suddenly this guy, radio silence. It's like he's fallen off the face of the earth. Can't get a hold of the guy. Can't get a hold of the guy. And so my client calls around, speaks to a couple of attorneys, go, hey, call Steve Lehto. He does consumer protection stuff. I get together with the guy, and we wind up having to file a lawsuit because the guy becomes non-responsive. Literally, he tore the windows out of the house and skedaddled with my client's money. And now here's the problem. As the homeowner, do you litigate this knowing it might be a year and a half before you get to trial with that plastic on your windows in Michigan? Or do you try to mitigate your damages by bringing in somebody else? And here's the thing. You'll probably be better off mitigating your damages by bringing in somebody else if you can afford it. But guess what the new window installer is going to say? And I don't care who you hire. A new window installer is going to come in and say, the guy who ripped out your windows screwed up all kinds of stuff. It's going to cost us even more to fix this than if we'd started the job ourselves. But we're not going to get started till you give us a bunch of money because we got to buy windows, which is what the first guy said. Now you're thinking to yourself, okay, am I throwing good money after bad, as they say? So you bring in a second window installer and they put in the windows and they hand you a bill and you got to pay it, but you're still all the money that you paid the first guy. And if the second window installer says that the first guy screwed stuff up that made the job harder, it might have cost more, and then there's the difference in value there that you can go after as well. And so we filed a lawsuit against the guy. The guy made up a million excuses, never said he didn't do it, but he also never had any great excuses as to why he didn't finish the job. So we actually had a trial. Now, the funny part is that the facts in this case were so egregious that I did not ask for a jury after consultation with my client. I said, let's do a bench trial. And one of the interesting things is I had a bet with one of my coworkers. I said, because I had somebody go, there's no way he's going to let that go to a bench trial. You're going to go to a jury and hope you get somebody on the jury who somehow buys this guy's nonsense. And I said, I bet he won't because he won't want to pay the jury demand fee. And he didn't. And I forgot what the jury demand fee was back then. But if you demand a jury, the first person to demand it's got to pay the fee. And a couple $100, And if I had demanded a jury, I'd have to pay it. And if he had demanded a jury, I could rely on his jury demand, but he'd have to pay it. And the guy didn't demand a jury. And we had a 1-day trial. Put in all our proofs. In fact, I think it was only half day. I think it was just literally started in the morning or done by lunchtime. And I remember it was pretty funny because it was a bench trial. The judge actually would take a couple breaks and put other stuff on the record unrelated to our case. She'd go, hey, everybody just stay where you are. I'm going to put something on the record here. And then she'd bring in another. And at the end of the trial, she awarded my client a judgment for literally every penny we asked for. Every penny. Okay? But here's the problem. That means that you prepare a judgment. It's a piece of paper, judgment, and it's got the case caption on it, stuff like that. In favor of plaintiff and against defendant. Here's an amount, blah, 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 blah. At the bottom, it gets signed by a judge and stamped as a true copy. You now have a piece of paper saying this guy owes your client a ton of money. It's a judgment. It's a piece of paper. And now, interestingly, this guy did not go bankrupt, as far as I know. But my client, I know, spent some time trying to wring the money out of the guy. But it was such a pain. And if you looked at when the guy tore the windows out, to when my client got some of his money back. I don't know if he got it all back, but this is a long time ago. It was quite some time. And so I've had people say, Steve, if the courts can't offer a complete remedy that makes me whole, what can I do? And this is where I tell people. I say, especially in the contractor industry, go off referrals, references, and do homework, because there's not much of a backstop for you as a consumer. So if you're going to put a roof on your house, ask around amongst your friends. Anybody here ever put a roof up? Does anybody know a company that does that? If somebody comes out to your house and gives you an estimate, ask them, is there someone nearby whose roof you've done that I can go look at? I'd like to see your work. And the interesting thing is, reputable companies will do that. And I can also tell you that as a homeowner myself, I have referred people and said, yes, here's who I had work done for me. I've also had people say, oh, here's who I had do the work for me. And once you find good people, it's amazing what word of mouth does. It is utterly amazing. And so are there companies out there that will do your windows, do your roof, do your driveway, do whatever's you've done? Yes. Are they all good? No. No, they're not. How do you spot one? Because like I said, this guy had a business, the one I'm talking about, had a business right on a major thoroughfare, literally 3 miles down the road from the courthouse, ironically. But was great at ripping windows out. Wasn't so great about putting them back in. And that's the tricky part. That's the tricky part. So Sean, thanks for sending this from Mankato, Minnesota, and KEYC. Ryan Paris wrote it. Contractor declares bankruptcy. Customers stuck with bills. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. I, for one, welcome our new insect overlords.